Hi, I'm Josh Mulligan with Tricky Fast Studios, and in this tutorial, we're going to be going over creating a game controller and a high score system for the player. So the first thing that we're going to create is just an empty game object. Just reset its position. We're just going to call it game controller. And we're going to add a state machine to that, as well as a value holder. Now for the states, we're going to add 3 states. This new state, we're going to name it main menu. Second state will be not paused. And the third one will be paused. If you haven't already, you can grab the canvas prefab from the working folder and drag it into the scene, and you'll see the main menu pop up. So we'll first go over the main menu functionality. We're going to first add an action list. And onto this action list, we're going to add a change state action. Have it tagged, change the tag to enemy, and the state name is going to be idle. We can duplicate this. And not have it on tagged, but instead named. And we're going to do the cat camera. And we can set that to dead. The last thing we're going to add here is for the high score. We're going to do a set UI text. Can have it be named. We're going to do main menu high score text. And you should see it pop up. For the body, we're going to do named conductor. And the reference name is going to be high score integer. Now, if you don't already have a conductor, you can create an empty game object, name a conductor, and then just give it the conductor script. You can just add an integer value to that, and then just name it what you put here, high score integer. And then you should be all set. Since we already have one, we are all good to go. So when you load up, what's going to happen is on the main menu, it's going to change the state of the enemies that are spawned in and the camera. So nothing is moving around. And it's also going to set the saved high score as the text right here. On the same level as the action list, we're going to add 2 UI button triggers. First one is going to be the play button. The second one is going to be the quit button. Target is named, and on the canvas, these have specific names. So we're just going to put them in. Since we're on the main menu, this one will be main menu play button. This one will be main menu quit button. Now under the quit button, this one's easy. You just type in quit game action. And that is the quit button. That's all you need for that. For the play button, we're going to add an action list. And under this action list, we're first going to add a set enabled action. We're going to type in main menu panel and have is enabled set to false. So this will disable the main menu, and we're going to have 5 change state actions. For the first one, we're going to set the player to playing. The second one will be the cat camera. We're going to also set that to playing. You can type in game controller, but since it is the owner, we'll just leave it owner. We're going to set the game controller to not paused. On the canvas, there is an object called controls beginning pop-up. And we're going to set that to start. So when you launch the game, it displays the controls and they fade out. And for the last one, we're going to do tagged and enemy. The state name for the enemy will be initialize stats. And that is all you're going to need for the play button. For the game controller, right here under state machine, for the initial state, you're going to want to set that to main menu. And now that we have the player being switched, we're going to want to go in here and set that to idle at first. So now, when we play the game, we won't be able to move, and neither will the enemies, until we hit this play button. You can see it's pulling the high score from the conductor. High score integer has 3 there, so it's showing up as 3. Can't move the player around, but if we hit play, and then now you're able to move around as the player, aim in, shoot, all the functionality that we did before, you should be good to go. Now, we don't have a pause menu, so that's what we're going to add in next. If you find that you can't click on any of the buttons, and you have them simply just set as named, and you just have the names in there, what you can do is what I've done here, is where you set the canvas as the named, and then you go down the path of the canvas to where you have the specific button. But since we're playing, and the game controller switches to not paused, we will add the functionality for not paused. So what we're going to do is add a keyboard trigger, and this will be the button that will bring us into the pause menu. We're just going to set this as escape, and put an action list down. Under this action list, we're going to have a set cursor mode. This will just make it unlock, so you're able to click the buttons. You want that to be under the action list. Cursor mode action will be confined. You want to do a set trigger animation parameter. And this is going to be for the pause menu. So what we're going to do is have the canvas as named. We're going to have the path be pause menu. The parameter name is up. If you have this specific canvas prefab dragged in, then you want to have the set trigger animation parameter. And this is going to be how we open and close the different menus. And since we're pausing the game, we're going to want to have a few change state actions. We're going to add in 4. 1 is going to be for the player. Set the player to idle. We're going to also set the cat camera to dead. Tagged enemy. Set enemies to idle. And finally, we're going to set the owner, the game controller, to paused. The pause state, we're going to have a bunch of buttons. So we're going to add 6 UI button triggers. The 6 different buttons we're going to have on here is a resume button, controls button, a back button, quit button, a dead quit button, and a dead restart button. So I'm going to quickly fill in all of the information for these. Now that we have all these UI button triggers hooked up, we can start with the resume button. And now what we're actually going to do with the resume button is take this action list, we can copy it and paste it over here. And we can just switch all of these to pretty much the opposite. Make sure the enemy is set to initialize stats. And once you have everything switched around to unpause it, you are good for the resume button. For the controls button, we're just going to add a little action list. And under the action list, we're going to have 2 set trigger animation parameters. This first one is going to be for the pause menu. Set that parameter name to down. The second one is going to be for the controls panel. And that parameter name will be up. That's all you need for the controls button. The back button is going to be the same. We can just take this action list and flip around the values. So the pause menu will be up and the controls will be down. The quit button is really easy. You just add a quit game. Make sure that's on the same level. And that is good. Same thing for the dead quit button. You can just copy and paste that and you are all set. For the dead restart button, what we're going to do is add in a load scene action. And you can just add in the name of the scene. You'll see it up in the top left. This specific one is cat TPS tutorial showcase. If you don't want to type out the whole name of the scene to reload it, you can go to File, Build Settings, and in the Build Settings, you are able to see the tutorial showcase, and then the number on the right, that is the scene index, and you can just type that in there. That is all for paused. Now with all of the menus done, we are going to add some spawning in for both the soldier and the drones from the other tutorials, as well as some ammo boxes just around. So we're going to need our 2 looping actions. This first one, you can type in ammo loop. Make that delay around 30. And if you leave it at 0, that means it will constantly loop. And we'll name the second one enemy loop. The enemy will handle both the soldier and the drone. Now we can close the state machine, go down to the value holder. And we're going to need 3 game object value components right here. And we're also going to need 3 game object list values. We're going to have 4 integer value components. First one being wave count. The other ones you can just duplicate, and we will name them ammo spawn index. And we will name them these. For the game object value components, we're going to name them the respective spawn point. That one will be drone 2 spawn. For these, we're just going to have them be plural, so soldier spawn points, drone spawn points, and finally ammo spawn points. Under these spawn points, we're actually just going to create some empty game objects. Soldier spawn point 1. However many spawn points you want. We'll just fly up here. Spawn point 1 will be right there. We can rename this to 2. We can set 2 over in this corner. And so on and so forth. And we're going to do this for the soldier, the drones, and the ammo. Once you create the empties under this, you want to go back in here, specify the size. We have 5 of them, and then you can just drag them in here. And we'll do the same for these two. Once you're done putting all of these ones in, we are going to go into the enemy loop and add in an action list. Under this action list, we're going to add a modify integer value. We're going to change the wave count, and we're just going to add 1 each time. Right after this, we're going to do a set UI text action. And here we're going to apply the wave count to the wave count text. We just have the path going down to wave counter text. Right after this, we're going to do a set random int action. We're going to have 2 of these. First one will be for the soldier. We're going to have soldier spawn index. Min will be 0. And you can see soldier spawn points, we have 5. So we're going to set this to 4. Going to do the same, but for drone spawn, we're going to do a get game object at index. The index is going to be owner and soldier spawn index, the number that we just randomly generated. The value list, where it's pulling from, also be owner, reference name, soldier spawn points, and we're going to store it soldier spawn point. We're going to do the same thing for the drone. And we're going to add another looping action. And under this looping action, you can name this spawn soldier. We're going to have it loop 3 times, so it spawns 3 enemies. We'll have a delay of 0.5. Under here, we're going to have a spawn action. Make sure that's under the looping action. For the prefabs, you want to go into the working folder and drag in soldier. Make sure that set transforms is checked. And for the start state, we want to have initialized stats. Now for the drone, we can just duplicate this. Change this to drone spawn point. Make sure the prefab is drone. And you can have it spawning under NPCs. If you want them in another place, you can do that as well. For drone, we'll have 2 loops. And have drone to spawn. And we're going to do the same logic from the enemy loop, just apply it to the ammo loop and replace it with all the ammo stuff. And that should be all for the game controller. That should be all set. You have the ammo and both of the enemies spawning. Just make sure that these 30 delay, you have 25 delay for the enemies. And with that, you should have a working game controller. The last thing we will do is revisit the dead state of the player. What we can do is add a set cursor mode so you can click buttons. We'll set this to confined. We're also going to add a sound action for when the player dies. Player death. We'll do a change state. This will change the game controller. Change it over to paused so you can click the buttons. And then finally, we will have set trigger animation parameter. And this will bring up the dead menu. And in the dead state as well, the last thing we will add is a integer value trigger. And what this is for is to check if you beat the high score, and then it will overwrite the high score, and the next time you play, it will be displayed. So below this, we're going to add a set integer value, and now in the trigger itself, add player score. If you don't already have a player score integer, we can just duplicate player health, name that player score, set that equal to 0. And what we're checking is if the player score is greater conductor, and the high score integer on there. Range, you can leave it 0. And if the player high score is bigger than the current high score, we will overwrite it. We will do conductor, high score integer, and the new value will be player score. You can have this as player, or you can have it as owner. And now you should have a working game controller and player. To find out more about how to get the enemies working, you can watch the enemy AI videos for the third-person shooter tutorial.